To clear that up about Ali Khan or Aga Khan, whatever it is, he was a very, very rich Muslim prince from Pakistan. I didn't know it was Pakistan, but he was at one time he was married to Rita Hayworth, which has nothing to do with Daddy. But when Daddy came home and told us who he was, whose box he was in, and out of the goodness of their heart, they asked him to sit down because he must have looked like he was worn out. Well, you can imagine he was probably in his 60s, and which isn't that old nowadays, but he'd been drinking all day and was just tired. Anyway, he came home and he said he was had a greasy look about him, and here he was sitting with a prince and money galore, and Daddy would have asked him for a loan if he'd known that, maybe. Anyway, that was one of the experience. Now he took all of the grandkids, but Nick tells me that he didn't get to go. I guess he was too young or
Grandpa was
whatever.
too old.
And but that was like Nick said, a rite of passage for the grandkids to go to the Derby with Grandpa because it was an event. They didn't have seats. They sat in the what do you call that?
Rose garden.
The what?
Rose garden.
Rose garden, yeah. And they would place their bets, and they probably had the kids running to place their bets and probably getting them drinks. And I don't know, but he used the kids to be runners for whatever was needed. So, but that was something for them. They went ever Derby. He went ever Derby day, and I would ride him over because we didn't live that far. Of course, they had to walk home then, and but it was an experience for the kids. Let's put it this way: if he took you out, he showed you a good time, you would remember it. Nick, I know, went to Hawaii with him. That was probably an experience. I do remember on the plane, he got you a drink, didn't he? Or ordered you one? The girl said, "We can't serve him a drink." And he said, "Well, bring it to me then." Well, this is true. Mazzoni's on 3rd Street. He would take the boys in and go to a movie. I know they saw an action picture. I can't think of the name of it. D-Day or... Nah, you probably don't know. Well, it doesn't make any difference. It was a war picture. And they went to Mazzoni's for lunch. And he said 2 oysters and a beer, 2 oysters and a beer. And when it was Don and Jim Weber and Jack and my dad, I think that was all the boys. They were about the same age. And the waitress says, "I can't serve them a beer." He said, "Well, then bring it to me then." So now, I know they got the oysters, whether they ended up with a Coke or not, I don't know. But he did fly to Hawaii to see Lee and Peg when they were living over there, when Lee was in the Navy. And that must have been something, flying to Hawaii. He had to be in his 70s, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Francie sent Nick along with him to be his companion and to be his runner, I'm sure. Oh. What was the other thing I was going to bring up?
I don't know.
The racetrack.
How about Weber's Dispensary? What can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. Uncle Henry, Daddy's brother, and he might have owned this with another man at one time, a liquor store at 20th and Market. And somehow or other he bought the other man out, so it was Uncle Henry's exclusive. And it was Weber's Dispensary at 20th and Market. Well, Uncle Henry died in 59, I think, or 59. and his wife Victoria wanted to sell it. So Daddy and my brothers and Lou Ising, I think that's all, bought it. And I was working for lawyers at the time, and my boss drew up the articles of incorporation. And when he read them, when Mr. Brown read the articles, he said, Carolyn, I've never seen anything like this in my life. He said, your dad's president of the corporation and has put up no money whatsoever. All the others put in money and he put nothing up. I said, that's because he's daddy. And he said, okay. So it was incorporated that way. And it was a nice little income farm. They probably didn't make that much, but Daddy and Tom and Lou worked. Oh, Elvin. I don't think my brother Jim worked too much because he was a milkman at the time and he would get up real early. But the others worked worked at the store. And in those days, it wasn't as a scary neighborhood like it is now. Well, no place was scary like it is now. And they were robbed a couple times, but one of the funniest is Daddy was sitting in the back. Tom was working, and Daddy was sitting in the back. And the guy came in. Well, he heard Daddy mumbling or saying, "What's?" Daddy hollered out to Tom, "Tom, you need help? What's going on out there?" And the guy that was robbing them, it could have been two, I don't know, he said, "What's going on back there?" And he goes back and he said, "Oh man, what are you doing back here?" And Daddy said, "I belong here. What are you doing back here? You get out of here." And he asked for his billfold and he said, "Don't take my union card." Now what that union card was going to get Daddy, but anyway, he took his money, but he didn't take his union card. And then Tom was robbed, and I think Lou was robbed. And after a while, they've had it. It was scary, you know. They didn't. None of them wanted to get hurt, but they owned that liquor store at 20th and Market for years, and I guess about 10 years.
Maybe.
Yeah. So it was a nice little Weber's dispensary right up Daddy's alley. They called it, his Daddy's friends called it the Peppermint Lounge. And you'd go in there. Now there were one or two chairs. Daddy, of course, had the chair and the table. Everybody else sat on beer cases. And when he'd see the kids coming, the grandkids, he'd go into the cash register and take out a handful of coins and throw them on the floor and say, "Kids, I dropped some coins down there. Pick them up for me and you can have them." So, I mean, that was his way of giving to the kids or treating the kids. And he always had plenty to drink down there, and somebody'd go out get food for him. And George Lucas, remember him?
I remember the name.
Yeah, so many of his friends would stop by there and sit with him, babysit. And many a night, Mother and I went down to pick him up. I was mighty brave riding down there, but in those days you weren't scared. It was just, but.
Do you know the story about the fish that made him sick?
About the what?
The fish that made him sick?
Oh, it was on a Friday, and of course they had fish, and I don't know, I guess they got it from one of the churches at the fish fries. I don't know, but anyway, he got sick later while he was sitting there. He had an upset stomach, and he said, now in the meantime, he had ice cream. The ice cream man came by. He had candy bars, whatever else that the liquor store sold, potato chips or that. And he said the fish is what made him sick. So Daddy had a good life. He had a good time, and it's a lot to say for a life.
Talk about Sister Renee.
Sister Renee was one of a kind. I mean, she was a product of Uncle Bill and Aunt Margie, two of my favorites. So, I mean, she could do no wrong in my book, and she couldn't. She was a very religious nun, but yet she was down to earth. One of the girls I worked with in the law office was taught by Sister Renee at Mercy. And she said, "Oh, Carolyn, she was my favorite teacher." She said she explained things and she could relate to people. You know, she was always for the underdog. She would always help out anybody who was down or suffering or that. But Catherine, my friend from work, she said she was one of the best teachers at Mercy, which she was. And then she was administrator at Sacred Heart Home. And one of my friends up there said, Sister Renee called them all together and she said, "Listen, I want you all to be ready at 1 o'clock. We're going to have a meeting, and you can bring your papers, but you don't really have to." But she said, "We'll have lunch there where we're going, and then we'll have a meeting." And Mary said, "Here we end up at Churchill Downs." She said she had a meeting, had lunch for us at the one of those special rooms, and they said Mary was the one probably said it. "Sister, I thought we were going to have a meeting." She said, "We are. We'll decide something. We'll make a decision on something." And so she had the meeting at Churchill Downs. Mary said she did that a couple times. They loved her up there. Well, why wouldn't they? I mean, she was. She had a little bit of Aunt Margie and a little bit of Uncle Bill, but she had herself too, and she was a very good person. Miss her.
You talked about teaching at Mercy and you talked about Sacred Heart Home, but there was a whole lot in between there. She was probably the first one in our family to go to college, let alone get an advanced degree, right?
Right. She got, I don't know how many degrees. I know one was from Notre Dame. She traveled to Pakistan. She got grants through the government, traveled to Pakistan and Hawaii. She went to school over in Hawaii and other countries.
She went to St. Louis, right? St. Louis University?
Yeah, she graduated from St. Louis University. Yeah. She was a very intelligent person, but kept it to herself, you know. You knew she didn't brag on anything and nothing. And she was a character too. Aunt Margie told about one time she went down to 4th and Jefferson, and she said she sees this little girl selling newspapers, whatever the news of the day was. Special. And she said, there it was, my daughter, Mary Rose, selling newspapers with a tam on her head and, you know, scrappy clothes. And she said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, Elvin had this and he asked me to sell papers for a while." So, yeah, they were all close. I think especially Jim and Sister Renee were very close, and Francie and Renee were very close. I remember on Sundays, before Mary Rose went in the convent, she and Francie went horseback riding every Sunday. I mean, for cousins, they were very close.
Where did they go?
Right next door to us.
No, where did they go horseback riding?
When?
Where?
Oh, where? Out at the Jacobs Park out on 3rd Street. That's not the name of it. You know where amphitheater is? Mm-hmm. In that
Iroquois Park.
Iroquois Park, yeah. They would go out there and ride horses, and but when she went to the convent, we were all shocked, you know, because she Well, she wasn't one of these holier than thou people by no means. But
And was she involved with the start of Assumption High School?
yes, yes, she was principal, I think, there, or over the nuns.
Say where, they can't hear me.
Huh?
Say where at Assumption High School.
At Assumption High School. She taught at Mercy, then I think she taught at Assumption. And then, oh, she's had all kind of jobs. She went to school for nursing. She was a nursing nun up in Hamilton, Ohio. She wore a white Mercy uniform, habit rather, and we had pictures of it as a nurse. And she was in Hamilton. Then I couldn't begin to tell you what all she did. Like I say, she won a lot of grants to study, over in other countries. I know Pakistan and some other country over there. Japan? Did she go to Japan?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. And she was a very, very good business person. I mean, she knew how to handle people.
Well, she ran 3 hospitals in Cincinnati.
She ran 2 up in Hamilton. 2 hospitals, I guess, up in Hamilton. Then she ran Sacred Heart Home here in Louisville. And she retired and then went over they needed somebody over in, what's the name of I can't think of the name of the home over in Indiana, in Jeffersonville, or New Albany, Providence. She went over there and substituted as whatever you call it, administrator. And then she retired a couple Times. Then she stayed at the farm or stayed out there, and she loved it. She and Sister Martha, it was really nice, very nice. And she'd have us out, we'd play cards. And I remember the year 2000, when the new millennium came in. And I think all of us was scared everything might fold up. It was Sister Renee and Sister Martha and Sister Roselia and myself and Ann Holland and I don't know who the other. Francie didn't go. The married ones didn't go because it was New Year's Eve and they stayed home with their husbands. But we had a New Year's millennium party out there, and it was very nice. Mary Rose loved her dog. She's the one that got me my Maggie. She called me up one day and said, "Wouldn't you like to have a dog?" I said, "Yeah, but I can't." "Why not?" "I don't know." I made all kind of excuses. "Well, I've got one for you." And she's a feisty one. So she was up the street from her, the road from where they lived. And the kids were selling the dogs for milk money. That's what they told Sister. And they had about, maybe 5 or 6 little pups. And she said, "I picked out the feistiest one for you." And so she loved animals. She loved everybody. She was just, we were very fortunate to have her as a cousin for a long time. She died too young, but she wasn't that young, was she? But she went to her reward. So, but she was a big tomboy. They said, climbed trees and they told about the vaudeville. You know what vaudeville is? Okay. That was down the street from where they lived. And my grandmother and Mary Rose's, Sister Renee's grandmother, they were the same. We both had the same grandmother. I didn't. I wasn't even born. But Grandma would take all the kids and say, the kids would say, "Grandma's coming, Grandma's coming." And Grandma was supposed to pay for them. grandma paid for herself, not for the kids. So a little larceny in all of us, I'm afraid. In those days, people, it's just a different, it it's just different atmosphere. So I would love to have my, what do you call it, ancestry done. Tommy did, and he's always going to bring it in to me, but I never have seen it. So you think that's enough?